why there's a picture of the floor. Is that one on the other side two-sided also? Oh. Never mind, it is. You know, we have not had people in City Hall all year.
Well, I think there was a late meeting thing, wanted to put everyone to sleep.
If anybody wants to come to the side up in front of the table, that would be nice. Michael?
Are we ready? Okay, well, good afternoon. And I'd like to first of all thank you for coming. We have some amazing news to share with you this afternoon. With me are members of city staff, city manager, aldermen. We have representatives of all of the unions. We have our facilitator. We have our director of HR. All are here to share with you the details of what I believe to be one of the best union agreements in our time. And before we get into those details, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on the process that we used to get here. In the spring of 2012, the City Council saw fit to create a task force. The task force was charged with looking into the options for addressing our long-term liabilities as they related particularly to police and fire pensions and OPEB. After several months of meetings and learning about the many options that existed, we found ourselves at the point of readying for bargaining. The task force morphed into the bargaining team. But before that could happen, everyone to be involved was to be trained on this new process called interest-based bargaining. A few years ago, I did a presentation for my colleagues on the council on interest-based bargaining. Having used the process with the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County for a number of years, I knew that the collaborative model was something from which the city could benefit. The model provides for open dialogue on all issues. Full disclosure is a must if the model is to be successful. A change of mindset is needed to move away from the traditional form of bargaining. An introduction of this form of bargaining was required of all members. All team members went through IBB training, and we brought in a facilitator from the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service to help us through the process and to keep us on track. Mr. Bill McFadden is with us this afternoon, who is our facilitator. Traditional bargaining required two opposing teams who bring their perspectives to the table. Then, in a matter of time, someone was going to win and someone was going to lose. IBB, also known as win-win bargaining, is a very different approach. There are no proposals, but rather issues or problems to be solved, to be addressed. Once the problems are identified, the group as a whole brainstorms solutions to the problem without passing judgment and without concern for obstacles. Then the options for solutions are measured by standards, such as is it legal, is it affordable, is it saleable, is it doable? The process allows for more out-of-the-box thinking and a free flowing of ideas. It requires a trust amongst the members and a true commitment for working for the good of the whole. The team came up with 5 major issues to tackle: pensions, OPEB, post-employment, health benefits, health care, wages, and the DROP program. Before we get into the solutions, I'd like to recognize Alderman Arnett, who will share with us our liability today before the negotiated agreements are signed. Alderman?
Thank you, Alderman Penlace. We have, although I don't know if the camera can see it, we have a graphic, and this is what we were faced with when we started the process for our pension plan. And you can't see the line, but the actuarial projections were showing that we were going down, down, down in an unsustainable position. And even worse, on a pension, after you reach a certain level, you're prescribed from certain kinds of investments, which makes it hard to get back to where you need to be. Where we needed to be was on top of this line. Some of the reasons we weren't up there were because of the very low level of contributions to the pension plan. Same kind of problem with our retirement health plan, the OPEB, where we had a growing funding obligation, yellow lines, and contributions that were not getting us close to where we needed to be to fulfill those obligations.
Thank you, Alderman. With pension shortfalls and OPEB accountability threatening us, we knew that we had to address these crucial issues. I'm going to ask Mr. Melanoff now to speak to us about those hot buttons.
Thank you, Alderman Finlayson, Mayor, Council, and all my friends from the different departments. We want to take this time to thank you for teaching me through this process, 14 months of education. I think the results really speak to that. There's many things that have been spoken shortly that were not something I necessarily came in knowing about. And really bears down to the success of this process. The biggest issues that Alderman Arnett and Alderman Finlayson mentioned were our OPEB and our unfunded pension liabilities. When I first took this job 2 years ago, the mayor, finance director, and I had gone to rating agencies, credit rating agencies. We had to deal with not having enough money to pay our bills, how we were allowed to make payroll, a variety of issues. But there's two other large ones, Union, OPEB, and pension liabilities. So last spring, two of the rating agencies gave us an upgrade, except one, Fitch, said they were going to downgrade us because we needed to address it. I'm here to say to confirm that we set the goal to address that, did it collaboratively, and as a result, we're taking from a position of as much as $40 million in pension, $30 million in OPEB. In 20 years' time, the pension will be resolved. That is going to be actuarially funded so that when we go to the credit agencies, they will then say, address this net part because the employees will be paying more over a 4-year period of time, up to 8% for the contribution to the pension. The city will be paying over those same period of time, 12 to 18%, which is actually very good compared to other communities. So it's an affordable solution for the employees and for the city. And the OPEB is very good come up with an idea that largely came from the employees that will also fund the OPEB liability over the next 20 years. We'll be talking about the new bucket, which actually came from our parents and asked me, but part of the way that's going to be funded is setting up a OPEB trust to take our contributions and put it into a reserve similar to our pension. There'll be an annual 3% contribution on payroll, 2% coming from the city, 1% coming either from the city full payroll reduction or a change in the plan. So I'm sorry if you can't hear me. Normally I'm not known as someone who's too quiet. But I want to stop at that at this point and turn it back over to all of the information. Again, it's just for a city manager, the type of process that I think makes government work well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Melanoff. We really had to think out of the box and draw on information from other jurisdictions and other programs. we were introduced to totally new ideas, one of which was called VIBA. And I'm going to ask Corey Blake, who's the exec for our AFSCME locals, to speak to that for us.
Thank you, Sheila. For the record, my name is Corey Blake. I'm the Special Assistant to the Executive Director of AFSCME. And before I go any farther, I'd like to just thank Sheila and Ross and the mayor and his administration, all the members of the bargaining team behind me, Mary Pat Whiteley, Jamaica McCall, and Jay Tucker, who are our union representatives here in the city. We meet here today to not only announce the ratification of a new 4-year collective bargaining agreement, but also to celebrate the culmination of a 4-year struggle by Annapolis civil servants to bring the best possible services to the citizens of this city. We began this process 4 years ago when the members of AFSCME agreed to forego a 3% wage enhancement during what was termed as the Great Recession. When this city was at its most fragile fiscal state, these AFSCME employees stood up and made tough choices so that we could continue to provide excellent public service. We renegotiated contracts to preserve the Parking Enforcement Division from being taken over by a for-profit vendor. We negotiated to reduce overtime, saving the city tens of thousands of dollars that enabled the creation of additional bus routes. We fought to preserve the integrity of the solid waste collection. Most of these actions went by unnoticed. They were not glamorous news items that elicit great conversation. They were, however, done in the best interest of the citizens of Annapolis. Now, we have reached a long-term agreement with the city that delivers even more. Yes, these employees have gotten long overdue wage enhancements. Yes, plan design changes will create savings in employee health care costs. Yes, resources will be utilized to shore up pension plans. But in particular, I would like to talk about one specific aspect of this agreement, a proposal that was originated by the union and ultimately accepted by the city that will save the citizens of Annapolis nearly $16 million over the next 20 years. More than that, it will eliminate a significant portion of the city's OPEB liability by transiting employees from a traditional retiree healthcare model to a new VIVA trust. This trust will not only give our employees a better, portable, and longer-lasting benefit, but will save the city tens of millions of dollars in post-employment liabilities. This agreement, and in particular, the mutual joint process of which it was reached, will no doubt be a model for municipalities across the country. We are truly at the cutting edge, and today is a day in which the citizens of Annapolis should truly be proud of their government and the employees who serve them every day.
Thank you, Corey. Wages are always a hot-button issue. We knew we had not given our employees a raise in 4 years, and during that time, they had been furloughed. We also knew that we wanted to retain the awesome employees we have and be able to recruit the best and brightest to our city. Salaries is a means to doing both. I'd like to ask John Lee from Local 400 to come now to speak to the wages package.
John Lee, representative from Local 400, union that represents Annapolis Police. Carol Spriggs and I answered our questions because before the meeting we tried to remember the last time employees got a raise, and nor Carol or I could remember the last time employees got a raise. So this agreement goes a long way to putting employees back on track and getting the wage increases that they haven't had over 4 years at least. The employees have gone through furloughs, they've gone through layoffs, they've gone through years of no wage increase. When we started bargaining, I was reluctant to think that we would be able to solve pension and OPEB and a drop and all the things that we wanted to do and still have money left over for wages. But you'll see from this agreement, it's 10% wage increase over the course of the agreement. And some of it's retroactive for the employees, and I think it begins to put us back on track and back to where we need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, John. During this process, we learned about many programs that would enhance our workforce. One of those programs that was new to most of us is called the DROP program. So at this time, I'll ask Mr. Carol Spriggs to come and talk about the DROP.
Again, I'm Carol Spriggs, President of the Master Professional Firefighters, Local 1926. Something that was very important to firefighters and police officers as well this year was to establish a DROP program, a Deferred Retirement Option Program. Basically, this program allows the firefighter or police officer who is eligible a chance to delay the receipt of their retirement benefits and continue to work for the city. We studied what other jurisdictions are doing, and we learned from those jurisdictions, and then we came with this proposal to the bargaining group. And one thing that we wanted to do was make sure that this retirement option was cost neutral to the city. And so we were able to develop a cost neutral DROP program so that eligible police officers and firefighters could enter this at the 20 or 25 year of service mark.
I've used, and your speech, you've used a lot of adjectives to describe our agreements. And that's because truly this is a landmark agreement. We have all of the unions at the table, and they have been from day one. That alone is pretty phenomenal. Everyone on the team, and we were a team. There was no police team, fire team, acting team. We were a team. And everyone gave 100% of their effort to help us address the issues, long-term and short-term liabilities facing our city. This is the big picture. But we need to look at now where we are after we sign this agreement. All the unions have ratified. It's our turn as the city council. And the bottom line is, I think, even more impressive than the programs we've heard about thus far. So I'm going to ask Alderman Arnett to tell us now. You shared with us early on the liability at the beginning. Tell us about the liability now.
Right. Thank you, Alderman Finlayson. First of all, we talked about our concern with our standing. Ability to fulfill promises made to the employees a long time ago. And if you remember these curves, for both of these, we were not fulfilling those promises. And so with this agreement, we've come up, and again, I know this is small and you can't see it, but the takeaway message is for pensions, we get back almost immediately to a fully funded position. And with our retiree health plan, also being called OPEB here today, we get back into a much better position, this area here. We're almost fully funded. Those are things that other municipalities, including our own county, are grappling with, and they're not being successful. And it's because of this team approach, this joint process, that we are able to get to this good financial position.
These charts, even though they're probably difficult to see, will show that we have decreased our liability over a 30-year period by about 80%. So the city and every resident in the city should appreciate the work that has gone into this agreement and how greatly the community will benefit from solving these problems. Cities around the country are struggling now with this very issue, and Annapolis has not only tackled these issues, but been successful in resolving these issues. So I personally would like to thank everybody for helping us get to this point. I guess at this point I'd like to recognize all the members of the team. You've met everyone up here, I think, except for Mr. Bill McFadden, who was our facilitator from FMCS.
thank you for allowing me to speak today, to give a benediction on this process that the parties worked so hard at. I work for the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, which is a small federal agency. We act as third-party neutrals in relationships between unions and employers on the federal, public, and private levels. Here in the public sector, we were asked to come in and provide training in the process for the parties. They took to that right away and ran with it, I'm happy to say. And of course, you see the results that have come from it. My role really was not to get into the issues as a mediator would, but to be the guide for the process. So I'm proud and honored to be involved with this and very grateful. But really, all the accolades belong to the folks who worked so hard to put together this very, very innovative agreement.
And of course, we have our HR director, Mr. Redstead, who directs all negotiations. And this time, though, he wasn't alone because we were all directing. He had everybody helping him direct negotiations this time. So thank you, Paul. Would you like to say anything?
Let me just say quickly, yes, I did have 25 people directing me for the last 14 months. But I think what was really amazing about our process was it was creative, it was rigorous, there were times we felt like we were doing research, there were times we would brainstorm, and what this process took was the commitment of those approximately 25 people, and the decisions we made and the wisdom that existed was the pooled wisdom of all the people in the room, and I don't think we could have gotten there without each of the contributions of the individuals who make up the group. So it was a long 14 months, but I think we're all pleased that we're being now. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And I'd like to repeat again, 14 months is how long it took us to get here. So it's not something that happened overnight, didn't happen without a lot of, I guess, blood, sweat, and tears, because it was hard at times, but the end justifies the means. So 14 months of hard work on everybody's part. The whole team is not here, as Paul said, there's 25 people, but I'd like to recognize the other folks who are here. Mary Pat Whiteley, raise your hand. John Ridley, Joe Ridley, I'm sorry. Ricky Truitt, Dallas Whiskey, Miss Dallas at the door. You okay, Dallas? Jamaica Mako, John Kritzman, Bruce Miller, our finance director, David Stokes, our fire chief. Also on the team was Mike Kingston, our police chief, and probably some others I'm leaving out. FJ, I'm sorry, FJ, who's my chief? Yeah, FJ Collins, who was the attorney, the only attorney in the room. Well, we had several attorneys in the room, but in the official capacity as an attorney. And Lee Binney was the citizen community representative, and she represented the Finance Advisory Commission. Okay, did I leave out anybody else? I want to call you title. Romali? Doug? Yes. Deputy Chief, I'm sorry. But anyway, it was truly a team effort, and as I said, I think that we've come to an excellent place, and truly this MOU will be a model for others around the state and further. At this time, I'd like to call our mayor up to make some final remarks.
Thank you, Sheila. I want to make a few remarks, but the first thing I want to do is to thank the folks on the advocacy team. This has been a laborious process. I think everyone started out with good intentions. I think it's fair to say not everyone was equally optimistic that the process would lead to a positive outcome. And getting to this point required a tremendous amount, certainly a tremendous time commitment, but also a lot of serious thought and debate and negotiation among all of the members of the team. And trust, that's right, as Sheila and others have mentioned before. So in a time when we see folks who are entrusted with serving the public in other places aren't always able to get things done, I think it's a real feather in Annapolis' cap that collectively between the council, between the administration, between the employee bargaining units, the folks on this team were able to come together and come up with an agreement that works. When you think about the different groups represented at the council, you have two leaders on the council, Alderwoman Sheila Mason and Alderman Ross Arnett. The council is concerned from a policy standpoint about making sure the city's fiscal policy is sound in the long term. We have the administration represented by several of the directors, Mr. Miller and Mr. Malinoff, who are concerned or whose focus is making sure that from a management standpoint, regardless of the politics, that the agreement that was put in place is sound from a management standpoint. And then you have the 4 employee bargaining units. And just as the two alderpersons had a responsibility to keep their finger on the pulse of their colleagues, so too did the reps of the employee bargaining units have a responsibility to make sure that what they were negotiating would be supported by the membership of all 4 of those unions. So there was a lot of balancing and negotiations that had to occur. And so I just want to reiterate, the first point I want to make is to commend all the members of the IBB team for sticking with it and for getting it done. Second point I want to make is to put this agreement into perspective over the past 4 years. This agreement really has 2 overall goals. One, from a personnel standpoint, to make sure that the citizens of Annapolis are going to continue to be served by well-trained, well-qualified personnel who will be a credit to this community, number 1. And number 2, to make sure that from a fiscal perspective, whatever services we provide, whatever benefits we want to offer, we can pay for it. Those are 2 of the overriding goals that this IBB team sought to address. And when you go back 4 years to the deficit that the city had at the beginning of this term, there were a lot of issues we had to address. And of course, we had to prioritize and tackle first things first. And the 3 priorities that this council had in order were, number 1, stop digging the hole deeper by balancing our budget. This council did that in our first budget. The second priority was make sure we have the cash on hand so we can pay our bills, keep the lights on. And given that we needed to restore over $20 million to the fund balance, that's not something we could do in 1 year, but over 3.5 budget cycles, we've gotten to that point. And the third major priority was make sure we address our long-term personnel liabilities. And where we started in the very first year with layoffs, with unions taking out full-page ads in the newspaper, with a very adversarial relationship that frankly lacked a lot of trust in terms of the facts and figures, to where we are today is remarkable. Where we have representatives from all 4 employee bargaining units standing literally shoulder to shoulder with representatives from the administration and the city council. And so it's a credit to all of the folks involved, and it's a very positive step forward that I think all taxpayers and residents of the city can take a lot of justified pride in. So with that, I think we're happy to take any questions that our reporters here may have, and I'll turn it back over to Alderman Smith.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Sure. The question was, what's the difference between traditional retiree health care and the VIVA? To put it in layman's terms, the difference is one is a bit of a pay-go system, and the other one creates a trust. And by creating a trust, which is prepaying for it, you get rid of the long-term liability that the citizens and the city have to absorb while those employees are retired. And so by having Aviva as opposed to the traditional retirement system or retiree health care system, the employees can still purchase into quality retiree health care. They can also use that benefit for other medical purposes like prescription drugs, like over-the-counter medication. They can leave it to a dependent or a beneficiary. A lot of things that you can do with it that you can't do with traditional retiree health care. But the most important thing is it eliminates that long-term liability that traditional retiree health care leaves for the city and makes it a fully funded trust instead.
Can I just follow up and make sure I understand? So is the Viva something akin to like some kind of health savings account for you in retirement? Like if I'm an employee, the money that gets turned into that, I can use it as I see fit within retirement?
Yeah, it's similar to that. Viva's set up under the IRS code. It's probably more like a 401k, but with some protections. It's a tax shelter as opposed to a tax deferred account. So there's some differences. It's specific to healthcare only, but you know, to look at something out in the world that people are familiar with, it's akin to a 401k.
I was just going to reiterate what Corey said. If you think about the traditional retirement plans, it's defined benefit plans, and then the 401s is defined contribution plan. That's what's happened with the OPEB being switched over to the VIVA. It becomes a defined contribution plan, so the city does not have an open-ended liability.
Another important aspect, though, is it establishes a trust fund which is governed by government accounting rules. It means the money can't come out of that fund at some point and go someplace else. So the employees' investment is really protected, and I think that's a very attractive aspect.
Thank you. Another question?
I have another one. Somebody go over the drop, like how many years you have to be in to qualify.
The way that we set up our drop, employees that reach 20 years of service are eligible to enter the drop, and it is a 3-year drop. While those 20-year employees are eligible to enter, they will continue to contribute to the pension liability, the 8%. Employees that have reached 25 years of service are also eligible to participate in the drop, and those employees will not have to continue to contribute to the pension fund for that 3-year period.
And then those 25 years, they also could be in it.
It's a 3-year period, yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Yes. Well, the overall agreement is 4 years. The salary will be an opener in year 4. Yes,
Another innovative kind of, to me, wonky kind of interest is something AFSCME came up with in the 4th year. Some of the communities that they represent, like in Tacoma Park and local 400s also in Tacoma Park, and they use something, a wage scale called an ECI, which is essentially a CPI index. And that's a real innovative change to the way that we've been doing raises in the past. Because not only does it index the increases, but it also is performance-based. So I give them a lot of credit to actually introducing a concept that we haven't had before. And we need to get together by April 1st to come up with the plan design that really gets the city in the direction of some more progressive ways of pay and performance.
The other thing that this does from the city's perspective, by having a 4-year agreement, it makes it much easier for us to understand our financial needs as we go out, produce and planning. And that kind of stability is extremely important from the management and the policymakers' perspective. We know what our liabilities are going to be for wages, for pension, for retiree health, for the drop program, 4 years out. The drop program also gives the chief of police and fire the ability to know that these are employees that are going to be here, but we need to be hiring to replace them. So it gives us a 3-year period where we can be training new people to train them. So there's just an awful lot of planning advantages that we've gotten out of this agreement. Yeah, it's been a series of 1-year agreements. I don't know if it's the first time ever, but
We've got 4-year agreements, but it's been a while. First time there's ever been an agreement of this scope.
Well, thank you for coming, thank you for participating, and for the team, I can't thank you enough for all the hard work that we put into the last year plus. So I think that ends our press conference.